Future Inc. Developing a Plan for New Zealand's Continued Prosperity is the title of a discussion paper from the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand. To tell us about some of their recommendations, I'm joined by Chief Executive Lee White. Hi there, Lee.
Good morning,
Now, what's the aim of this document that you've got there for New Zealand and for Australia, isn't it? So what are you aiming to achieve with it?
Well, this one here today is all around New Zealand, and it's a thought leadership paper that we're quite proud to have produced in order to stimulate the discussion and the focus on the prosperity of the country and to ensure that there is a good sense of public policy in the way that the ideas are developed.
Now, one issue, compulsory superannuation. You're used to it in Australia. You've had it for a long time.
We have had the system since 1992.
Yes. Now, do you think it's worked for Australia? Would you recommend it for New Zealand?
Well, let's pause for a minute, Michael, and ask what is the question that superannuation is trying to tackle? And it's primarily around the fiscal costs of changing demographics and the ageing population. So for Australia, the system since 1992 appears to be working quite soundly. Now, I say appears because it's got a long way to go, but it's already attracted nearly $2 trillion worth of savings, and that's a huge amount of money, which then helps the government manage the burden of the ageing population and what services it needs to provide. Now, our message here today isn't one to say New Zealand should adopt what Australia is doing, but obviously look towards other countries, including Australia, and adapt their systems to what they think is right for this country.
Tax reform. It's interesting the difference in tax between Australia and New Zealand. You have a capital gains tax, you have no GST on food, you have a much higher top personal tax rate, don't you, at 45% compared to our 33%. There are considerable differences. What do you think tax reform means in a New Zealand context?
Well, I think you've highlighted a number of the differences, but there's certainly areas of alignment as well, particularly when we look around at the corporation tax rate too. Tax is a complex area, but what we would be recommending is to say let's have a broad-based review in this country of the different elements of it. Now, why we say that is we see some aspects operating within New Zealand very, very well. Michael, you highlighted GST, and I think everyone would acknowledge that the way GST operates in this country is probably one of the most efficient systems throughout the globe. There's no level of messiness to do with exclusions, and it's quite a clear system. So therefore, we suggest that in order to make sure there's that continuing prosperity for the country, there needs to be a broad-based review of taxation. Because as soon as you start to tinker with one element, it might suggest that you need to do something else. And there is a good sense to look across to Australia and other countries on how they might be doing some of their tax positioning as well.
A higher age for superannuation. How's Australia approaching that at the moment?
Well, Australia has a system where there is some transition moving out in ages of retirement from 65. But again, that's not the only option available to deal with this fiscal cost to do with ageing. One could suggest keeping the age of retirement at a rate of 65, but then modifying what level of benefits are available at that age. So there's different ways in which governments can manage this burden, but again, we are suggesting that it needs to be done in a very effective planning method, because we're talking generations here that need to be managed, and managed in a way of taking account of ageing population, fewer people coming through the system, younger people coming through to make the tax payments. So therefore, you've got a lot of burden coming into the system that needs to be managed.
Okay, thanks very much for your time there. That's Lee White there, the CEO of the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand.